It's not a joke. It's not.
Well, hello. Obviously, we are on air. The weather tomorrow. Hi guys. Today, it's a special day, not very good weather, but the weather within us is extremely pleasant and sunny, hopefully. Now, we're gonna talk today about frequency masking and how to improve the clarity, which is something that I'm still not absolutely sure, but I have some doubts. And I'm gonna share it with you. I'm Vlad. For the people who knows me, I'm not gonna say anything. They know everything about me. For the other people that don't know me, I'm an old guy working unnecessarily long time in the recording business, especially with the scoring for games and especially movies. And also we're producing samples with our friends. So if you think that I can be useful for something, you can ask me whatever, if it's about the samples or about the recording the scores, or if it's about the mixing or about the cars. I have a lot of experience with cars since I have a lot of crashes. So I changed a lot of cars. If I'm sounding like some American president, excuse me, I'm also old, only not blonde. Now, some theory about the masking. Huh? Are they talking to me?
No, to tell them to
Let them know
write
that they have to ask questions in the chat.
the questions in the chat.
There's a question.
No, let them know that they have to ask.
Excuse me, I'm stupid. On the chat, in Zoom, you can send me questions, and very nice people here gonna let me know immediately if you send a question, and we can make a brief discussion about your question and the answer that I can give it to you. Today, okay, now, first, regarding the, is that okay? Okay. Regarding the clarity in the mix, it's related to a lot of things. Because the frequency masking is related to the clarity, we have to start from the source. And unfortunately, I have to share with you that half of the magic in the clarity and frequency masking is, it starts, the decision, all the problem starts in the arrangement of the music. Just like the mix down, it's done 50 to 60% during the arrangement. It's totally the same when we have the problem, or when we don't have a problem. We are very proud because we don't have a problem with frequency masking, and we have mix clarity and music clarity from the beginning. The first question is, it's very easy. If you want something to not overlap as a frequency with something else, the first question is, where did you position it in the stereo field, or physically the musician in the orchestra? Because as you know, when we're recording an orchestra, there is a certain position of the musicians of the whole lineup, orchestra lineup, and the musician on the sound field, from left to right, from front to back. And now, this you think is first easiest thing to do to avoid frequency masking and to improve clarity. If you want to layer two instruments with close notes, or for example, if they sound on the same spectrum and the same frequency, there is something, another magic, which is called timbre. If they have very close timbre and if they have almost the same dynamic range, because you wrote almost the same dynamic range or totally the same, and if they're on the same family of instruments, for example, woodwinds, it's a huge chance, because first they sit together on the whole, secondary they're on the same instrument family, and a third, if they play almost the same note in unison, and if they play in mezzo forte, there's a huge chance that there's going to be a masking. And if you want to layer it, but to avoid that masking, there is two obvious decisions. The first decision is to move them apart. For example, to give the same notes on the alto flute and bassoon. Example. We might be very innovations and surprising combinations are in the core of modern music composing. So we know everything from the classical composers already. The good thing is that most of the instruments within the orchestra, after a long evolution, had their own voices already. So that means that if you want to layer different kind of colors in the sounds, you can put it in the strings and woodwinds, or in the woodwinds and the brass, but it's better to be in different families. The other thing is that because of the classical positioning of the instruments in the whole, the masking is slightly avoidable from the beginning, because the instruments are positioned already in the orchestra in a proper way. During the evolution of the instruments, they already had that totally distinctive sounds. And but if you want to be creative and to make layers of different sounds on the same register with the same dynamic, it could be good, again I'm back to the panning, to be slightly on a different position on the sound field. I'll give you a very brief example. If you listen, for example, a bass drum and a bass guitar, usually they are in the center. That means that you have to put some efforts to make them distinguishable. And I'm going to show you some ideas how to do that. But for example, if you move them left to right, immediately you're going to start to listen correct the sound, exactly which is the sound of the bass drum, the kick drum, and which is the bass. You see, it's only a very fun example. Put it on left and right, and immediately there's no masking. And it's obvious which instruments, they are totally distinguishable if they are not on the same place on the stereo field. The other obvious option is if you cut some of the high and low frequency, or called high and low pass filters if you use. So, of course, if you want to layer instruments in the brass, it's good to cut the low frequency from the trumpets, of course, and to cut a little from the mid in the trombones, and to boost a little bit the low frequencies on the bass trombone and tuba. It's self-explainable, but that's going to help a lot. That's why they sound the way they sound after 200 years of evolution, that instrument, because naturally they're going to balance and they're going to sound good by themselves. Another good idea is to move. That's usually the reason that, of course, the horn's going to play a lot better if they're closer to the trumpets and the trombones. But as you know, they're totally apart on the other sides, because they're very close when they play in chords, sound-wise, to the same chord if it's played from the trumpets and trombones, for example. That's why they are pulled apart to both sides of the total left and total right in the sound field. So, but if they are together, you can cut from the low frequency in the high pitched instruments, and to cut a little bit, reduce a little bit from the high frequency in the low pitched instruments. And that's gonna make better balance if they sit together. Another option, it's called opposite EQ carvings. And that's totally the same. I'll give you an example when we start with the practical mixing demonstration in a couple of minutes. When you make opposite EQ carvings, that means that you cut some frequency from one instrument and boost the same region of frequency to another to make them to be more audible together in very dense arrangements. Another option is the dynamic EQ. Dynamic EQ is EQ with the compressor. That's the kit if the EQ was the MAM and the compressor was that. The kit is dynamic EQ. It's together equalizer and compressor, multiband compressor. It's very useful because you can boost something, but at the same time, when it's very excessive level of that frequency, you can put a threshold on the same frequency, so it's going to be reduced when it's too much. And that makes it very, very balanced as an instrument, as a tool. Another thing is the sidechain compressor. Sidechain compressor is the normal compressor, but it's listening all the time what certain input from some of the instruments doing. When the instrument's playing, it starts to work that compressor. For example, you put a sidechain compressor to the brass because you want in some particular moment the woodwinds to be more audible. And you put the compressor on the brass and put the same sidechain as inputs to listen the woodwinds as a group. So when they start to play, the compressor is going to start to make little ducks, little beds in the dynamic of the brass. Of course, the first and foremost, guys, please, dynamic writing, the writing of the dynamics in the score. That's a miracle. You can do everything with it. Don't put a lot of things on mezzo forte because on the samples you listen that means that all of them is going to be equal and it's going to be audible. In real life, it's not like this. What is mezzo forte in the sample and what is mezzo forte for the brass is two totally different things. In real life, the dynamic forks has to be a lot bigger if you want to achieve that change in the dynamic that you used to listen with the samples. Being a sample recorder for 20 years, I can share with you that when we made a perfectly recorded samples, multi-scale, with all the dynamic, lick stuff, different colors and everything, after this, the people in the post-production start to clean the sample from some unnecessary noises from the stage. After this, they're gonna tune live out of it. It's gonna be perfectly in tune, the sample, which is not like this in the real life. There is microtonal changes and microdynamical changes during the real musician's player. And after this, they're going to tune in. After this, they're going to compress it to be absolutely sure that dynamic is going to be totally the same and the velocity is going to be totally the same and all the dynamic in the woodwinds is going to represent the same dynamic in the brass. That's not in the real life. In the real life, when you set forte, fortissimo to the brass, there's not going to be anything else in the whole recorded. So you have to be careful how you're writing the dynamic. What I'm saying you all that is because just like it's going to be very rewarding even during the recording, but after this it's going to be even more rewarding during the mix down if you're very careful with the dynamic, the rhythm dynamic on the roll and all the forks in the parts. That means that they have to be slightly different dynamics for the different instruments and groups to achieve a natural result, which is going to be from the prima vista very obvious that they're playing the way you want them to sound. Knowing the range is another thing which is going to affect to the color. If you know perfectly what's the usable range of that instrument, not the extremely low notes that you find in the library or extremely high notes that you find in the library, that's also gonna affect to the clarity and to the masking also, because the useful range in the real instruments are the ones which are going to be distinguishable when you make the recording. So my point is, if you can, try to use an octave up and down as much as you can and as much as it's possible, because it's going to affect the mix clarity and to the frequency masking. Not to be the same note, but to be the octave up and down of the next instrument in the chord. The careful dynamic distribution, I told you, that's very important. The color, the space, the sound fields, we spoke about it. So my point is that it's very important to achieve a balanced recording before you start to make the mix and to start to wonder what's wrong with it and how to achieve a clarity and to avoid frequency masking. It's everything in the core. It's very often I repeat that probably too much, but the mixing is very, very similar to cooking and to painting a picture. If you want to, if in the picture you want to paint a bush in the forest, it's going to be difficult. But if you divide the picture on two parts, and on the left part there is slightly something like a desert, and after this on the right side it becomes jungle. It's going to be very easy to put the bush on the left side because it's going to be in the desert and you can see it's pretty easy. But if you put the same bush in the forest, you have to be very, very careful how you're going to position it there. And then there is a reverb. Reverb is going to help you a lot to make it three-dimensional and to pull apart the different sounds, because it's like a halo, again with the picture. You're painting the bush, a small bush, within the forest, but if you put a little halo around it, you start to see it in the picture. It's very easy. The small halo around it is a short reverb, ambience reverb, or different reverb than the other one. And that's the easy way that you start to hear and to listen that there's something else in that soup. Again, now about the cooking. The cooking is the same. If you put a lot of ingredients and plenty of species in and boil them, at the end you don't know how it's going to be. It's about tasting and to make a decision from the beginning which is going to be the saltier and which is going to be the sweet part and which is going to be sour and which is going to be bitter. And if you make the right decisions for the ingredients, at the end it's going to be balanced. The third thing is that if you put a lot of ingredient in the soup, at the end you can tell if there is a pepper inside or not. Okay, the pepper is more obvious, but is there a potato? because there's a pumpkin, for example, with it, it starts to be slightly difficult to say what's inside. So if you're more clean, and if you made a decision from the beginning how you're going to use all the ingredients, all the instruments in the composition, it's going to be a lot easier after this to mix it. If you listen to some of the contemporary composers, you can see that there's two options to achieve that. The first option is to be very clever and clean during the arrangement. The other option is to reinforce it with samples, because the sample's not going to sound totally like the real instruments in the orchestra, of course. That's the way you can change, you can alter a little bit the total dynamic, the macro dynamic and micro tuning within, or to change the chords within the group when you're using for some part of the notes as samples, for the other parts real strings or brass or whatever. Seth's cue, which we're going to listen today, it's a good example of that. He made exactly the thing that we're talking about. He made a sandwich of good, decent samples and the recording of live instruments. Most of the people, you're composers, you know better, but most of the people not gonna get the idea if it's 100% samples or 100% live, and that's the new status quo in the moment that we, the most of the scores that we listen on thank you very much. Thank you, Pablo. The most expensive, even the most expensive and not that expensive movies that we listen the scores on it, it's getting hard to say how big is the percentage of the samples and how big is the percentage of the real recording, but I'm telling you from my experience that the real recording is getting lower. And honestly, I can tell that. It starts to taste like a fast food, for good or bad. I'm not in position to judge. It's important what the production company needs from you as a composer. So if you want to be extremely successful composer, you have to follow the trends. And after this, to make a new one. And that's going to make you one of the best. Not only to follow the trend, but when you are there, up there with the gods in Hollywood, to change the trend. Excuse me for that. I used to say that I'm not very fond of some of contemporary composers, but recently they surprised me a lot. Hans Zimmer, for example, genius, of course. He wasn't my favorite composer, never. Probably from Gladiator, after the Gladiator, I was not very keen about his music, but Inception, it's not Inception, excuse me. I have a blank from the COVID. Now I'm going to be ready in a couple of seconds. The first movie that Interstellar, I was blown away. Huge gap between everything else and everything else. It's mostly organ, as you know, but wow, the colors, the impact, the power, and how it reinforced the picture, and what the feeling and the colors that left in your soul after this. It was, and now Dune, the new one. The new Dune is also very special thing. So that shows you that he's not gonna follow even the trend that he puts. He's changing the trend, and he's very clever and inventive and surprising and full of innovations. Not only the way he's composing, but the way he's arranging and the way he's evolving even. I'm not in position to talking about this for Hans Zimmer, of course, but that's my personal view and I'm sharing it with you. Okay, so we spoke about the arrangement. In the beginning, that's the theory. How you can avoid the masking and to improve clarity just when you put the instruments in different positions. Another thing, you want to use a flute, but to layer different sounds and different colors and different notes, which are very close to the root notes. The thing that you can do always is to overdub another couple of flutes after the recording session or in smaller studio and put it totally on the different sides of the stereo field, for example. Or to make full hodgepodge with the panning of the mock-up brass and the live brass. So if the live brass is French horns on the left and trombones on the right and trumpets slightly right to the center, you can do opposites on the mock-up brass, and it might surprise you sometime. It's gonna give you an impression that it's slightly bigger, that there is a slight delay between left and right, because the timing is not perfect between the samples and the live performance. So be creative. If you're creative, you're gonna have your personal signature in the sound. If you have your personal signature sound, and it's exciting for everybody, and it's nice to listen. If it's innovation, you're gonna be successful. Of course, the question is, what is successful? It's different answer for all of us. But now about the clarity. So sandwich with real instruments and samples, positioning in the stereo field, choosing wisely the sounds and the timbre between the different groups, strings, brass, woodwinds, and synthesizers and stuff. And that's the right combination of ingredients for the right mix. If you have all that, we're in position to start to listen what Seth did in, it was, what the recording, it was hybrid recording, isn't it?
It was the game.
It is a game for, yes, the hybrid recording means that we made a recording of different groups separately. Of course, that's gonna help also to your mix clarity and reducing the frequency overlapping. If you have the budget to make the recording of different groups separately, it's gonna give you first better option for editing. It's gonna give you better option for tuning, and it's gonna give you absolutely clean multi-stem mix down at the end. And that's what presently the production company is gonna ask for you. They're gonna ask a multi-stem surround mix down if you're working for very important projects. Like this, you're gonna have totally clean, without leakage, without everything. If you don't have that option, it's okay. You can always, again, reinforce it a little bit with samples, and that's gonna give you more impacts of the different groups, and it's gonna be cleaner, and it's gonna be easier to mix down. I'm not telling you that that's necessity to mix live instruments with samples. Honestly, I used to listen a couple of movies. As soon as I recall what was the name, I will tell you, but it was 100% recorded live, like a Vienna Symphony Orchestra on a stick for the movie, like in the old days. But it happens 2020, 2019, and 2018. There is 3 movies recorded on a stick with all the instruments all together, and it sounds gorgeous. Of course, it was probably, it took a lot of time for the music editor to put it exactly in the place, and if there's if it needs sync, probably they made plenty of takes, but it's possible, and we have examples of that. I'm gonna let you know in the document that you're gonna receive later what I mean, which were the movie. Okay, now today on the project that we're gonna look at, we have everything: woodwinds, live brass, mock-up brass, live strings, mock-up strings, percussion, voices, sound design, which is programming, synthesizers, pads and stuff. And that's all. As you can see, everything is in folders on the desktop. Can you see the folder? Steven, sorry. I look at Steven. Steven, very nice to read. Everything is in folders. If I open all the folders, you will see that we're gonna deal with Godzilla project, which is not unusual at all. It happens very often. And that's it. That's the full multi-track, huge one. Now I'm gonna close it, and I'm gonna let you know that since I'm old, I'm getting lazy. And because I'm old and lazy, I'm gonna show you how to achieve slightly faster results with the mixdown. Of course, being in a position of sound engineer and recording engineer, I'm gonna ask you to find your favorites and fellow mixing engineer and recording engineer, because you're a composer. You have to deal with something else. Very soon you're going to be very successful composers, and you'll be in a position to have assistance for arrangement, for copying, and for everything. Leave the mix down to the stunts, to the mixing engineers. But you need to know how to achieve a good result as fast as possible and as clean as possible, and to remove the mud and the unnecessary frequency from all the groups. That's why I close all the folder tracks in folders, and I'm gonna put an EQ and compressor, not track by track, but on the whole groups, and we'll listen together how it's gonna affect that. That doesn't mean that I'm not using plugins on the tracks. In my experience, if there's a problem, I'm gonna use a lot of plugins, usually simple plugins like EQs, on the different, on all the channels. But if the recording is clean, like this one, you need a bigger perspective. And the bigger perspective is that you can mangle with the sound to all the group. Now we're gonna make a decision on the fly if that's gonna work, or we're gonna need a little more thing to do within each of the folder tracks. My personal advice to you is to start with something that you have to put on the master, and in the context of the things that are on the plugins on the master, you're gonna start to make the mix with the different tracks and groups and folder tracks. That means that I want to make a reasonable sound on the master bus with a couple of plugins and listen through them during the time that I'm making mixing decisions, and when I'm carving the EQs or trying to reduce some frequencies. First of all, this is the mix window. On the mix window, I'm gonna expand the first, and that's the woodwinds. If I start with woodwinds, it's okay. If we start with percussion or the strings, it's also okay. The good and bad thing about this recording is that, as far as I remember, it's made by me in the small studio, in Dolly Media Studio. Good thing about that studio is that it's very dry. When it's very dry, it's easier to make creative and another surgical or correctional decisions, because about 90% of the reverb is gonna be added with the plugin. So we can sculpt easily the environment with good sounding reverb, not the one that we're recording. Okay, it's from outside. I'm gonna talk a little more for you. The woodwinds, as you can see, set, is that samples, all of them?
Yeah, they're all samples.
Okay, so we're not using the real woodwinds, we're using mostly samples. The thing about the samples, and all the samples, is that you're receiving a stereo sample. That means that when you start to play, and it's violins, they start to sound on the sample slightly or totally left. With the woodwinds, it's a little bit different, because the woodwinds are almost 100% stereo as a samples. It's almost 100% stereo as a samples, also the choirs, most of the synths and stuff like this. So to make some space in the stereo field, you have to position that instrument somewhere to left, to right, or in the middle. But I'm not gonna use, as you can see, all the panning. I made it from the scratch. Usually they're gonna be 100% left and right. And I'm gonna do it right now. That's how you're gonna start with samples, and that's how it's gonna start. It's gonna sound your woodwinds when you layer it after you program it and play it. I'm gonna use the headphones. Excuse me for that. I'm not gonna look very fancy, but that's me. I'm not gonna look fancy either way. Okay. It stops, okay. So, first of all, in that case, I'm gonna put a little more level on the outputs, because they're low level presently. And when we stack all together, all the groups, I'm gonna reduce the master level, because it's gonna get red. But now, let's listen only the woodwinds. I'm gonna put some simple compressor, and it's gonna help me just to make everything slightly more even, because I want to listen all the instruments within that group. As you can hear, I'm doing this only to be more audible and everything to be more tight within that group. We listen presently only the woodwinds, of course. Okay, fine. I'm gonna move that plugin directly to the folder group. Now, they sound actually very good by themselves, but the question is that we have to think about the woodwinds in context, not by themselves. If they're gonna play alone, that's perfect. but we have to foresee that they're gonna sound and they're gonna play in very dense composition and arrangement. So from the beginning, as I told you, we have to find the most natural and the right place in the frequency spectrum of each of the groups. And of course, in the woodwinds, you couldn't find sub-lows or extremely high frequency, which are pleasant and useful. For example, the piccolo, when it plays very high notes, it has to be loud, because otherwise it's not going to sound at all in the real situation. That means that even from the beginning, we might be very bold, and to put slight edge in the middle spectrum of the woodwinds. Let's listen to them in a context of the brass. They disappeared, as you can hear, so we have to help. At the end, you're going to receive one document with links. First of the link, I'm going to offer you the best plugin. Why is the best? Because it's dynamic EQ and it's for free. When I said for free, I mean really for free. There's no hooks like please donate $5 or it's gonna be free for 3 months, but after this you have to upgrade or something like this. And I'm gonna show you now this plugin. Wonderful. Bless you. There it is. Simple. And now. As you can hear, the thing that I'm doing is to find where is the useful part of the spectrum in the woodwinds, in all of them. And when I boost slightly the low mids, the clarinets and especially the bassoons appear to be stronger. And on the other parts, on the high mid frequencies, it's how to say, is the presence of the high woodwinds, the reeds, and the flutes. And of course, all the thing that we did is very modest, but it's going to be useful after this when we start to stack. Listen again. Excuse me, I'm going to loop it again. Okay, so far so good. Let's listen again in the context of the brass. Step by step, we're closer to make that shy guys to be more present in the context of the brass. They have to compete with the brass, and they are mighty warriors, the brass players. So we have to help to these little guys. Now we're gonna mute the woodwinds, and we're gonna listen a little bit from the live brass. What do you have here? As far as I can see, people telling us that the resolution. Okay, it's okay. Okay, we're gonna continue. Okay, these are the live musicians in Dolly main chamber, which is very small and room sounding. And at the end, it has to start to sound epic. The thing that we can do for them is to make them slightly more present, and at the end we're gonna add a reverb. Without reverb, we are far from exciting sound from the brass. But let's listen the brass by itself for a second. Honestly, maybe now is the time to put a little reverb to listen it again, but in the context of concert hall, to see when we're carving or when we're boosting something, how it's gonna sound through the reverb. I'm gonna make something which I'm doing very often. First of all, on the aux track, I'm gonna put an EQ, but not the reverb plugin, because I want to mangle a little bit with the frequency before it enters to the reverb engine. I'm gonna use mostly stock plugins today, so in the Pro Tools they'll be there all the time. Now reverb. Like in the real life, the big reverb has its own sound and color because it mimics a very complex acoustic of a real big hall filled with a lot of different kind of instruments. Just like the piano is a mechanical monster, all the big rooms are acoustical monsters. They have reflections, they have micro delays, they have decays totally different. They have a pre-delay. The pre-delay is how soon after the attack of the sound it's gonna go to the rear wall and go back to you. So we have to be careful also to improve the clarity and to reduce the masking problems with the frequency, to make it the reverb by itself, to make it as clear as possible. I'm gonna use the standard reverb which is built in the Pro Tools, and it's the Deverb. For big rooms and halls it's not sounding good because it has a modulation in the tail, but today we're gonna use it only as an example, and you're gonna listen, and together we're gonna decide if it's good or bad. First of all, by default setting, it's on 4.5. For me, that's very long. And let's start with 2.5 seconds, because 2.5 seconds is usually most of the biggest scoring stages around the globe are between 1.5 and 2.5. And because we want to be glorious, it's gonna be approximately 3.5. Now, let's listen without the EQ. EQ, we didn't touch anything on it, so it's almost like a bypass mode. we have to send to it. It's going to be, for example, bus 1 and 2. Okay, not bad. First of all, I'll let you know that most of the reverb starts to build mid-low and low frequency mud. The bigger the orchestra is, the more the mud is getting. So I'm gonna reduce the real lows. I'm gonna reduce real highs because I don't want to be very brittle sound, and even a little bit from the low mids, like this, as a starting point. I'm going to turn it up a little bit for you. Okay, as you can see, the clarity is slightly improved only by making the reverb not that muddy, which is easy. The more groups we're going to put in the reverb, the more that EQ is going to be more obvious how it's cleaning everything. So that means that we start to rebuilding the whole and make it sound even better, this fake virtual whole. Okay, now let's talk about the brass again. Now I'm gonna put, because I want the whole group to be more neat. I mean, to have more even dynamic of the playing. Again, I'm gonna put simple reverb, the built one. Okay, because I turn up a little bit the output, the impression is that it's better, but it's only because the level is getting higher. But the needle of the input is going to show you that the thing that we're doing, that the loudest members of the brass group are reduced, but the members of the group of the brass players, which are not playing hard enough and they're hiding, are boosted. So now the whole picture like this is slightly more even. That's good, but it sounds a little muddy for me, for my taste. And we're gonna use the same guy. First of all, because there are not a lot of people playing on that group, for me, the lowest part of the spectrum in that brass is weak. That's why I'm going to put one low shelf EQ and gonna boost the lowest parts. Okay, I boost too much the high frequency, but it's okay because with that dynamic EQ, I have also compressor on the same band. So if I start to put the threshold down, golden and heavy at the same time, which is not bad. This is starting point. Again, after this, this is decisions which we gonna make only listening on solo that group. After this, we might change that all that stuff that we done. Maybe it's again slightly bright, so I'm gonna put one low cut. Excuse me, it has to be high cut, of course. And let's listen again, because the highest frequency is a little too prominent. If you're not absolutely sure which frequency you're touching, of course, that's why I'm doing opposite listening. I mean, I'm boosting something and listen where is exactly the nasty portion of the frequency. And after this, I'm starting to reduce that, the same part. That's how I did that decision. Cool. Let's listen to the market brass. As you can hear, the intention of the producer of the sample was totally the same. It has to be heavy and bright at the same time. The low instruments in the brass samples supposed to be heavy, and the highest part has to be very golden and brassy and contemporary sounding. So now we have to blend them. So first of all, I assume that probably we have to position them in the same reverb context, but the question is that these samples are already with some reverb, if I'm not wrong.
That was just the natural room mic.
Okay, so the room where they are recorded is slightly bigger. Let's listen again like this. Now we go. Okay, so the samples represent the perspective of the conductor and the brass player sitting in the hall, recording hall, approximately 10 to 12 meters from him, which is the standard situation. Now let's listen the live brass and the mock-up brass together. We're talking about the sandwich now. The idea of the sandwich is that we have to find the sweet spot where we still listen a lot of mock-up brass because it's perfect as tuning and dynamic and balance, and the live brass because the live brass is going to give us this impression of live recording. If we listening 60% mock-up brass and 40% live brass, the live brass is going to start to disappear and it's going to sound like the most of the TV series, which smells. Maybe they made a live recording, but it smells to samples most of the time. So we have to find the right balance between perfect imperfection. So the imperfection obviously is the live musicians. The perfection is the tuned and samples that are dynamically and intonation and tuned and dynamically make them compressed. I mean, they're equal between the instruments. Okay, the live brass still has some problem in the lowest parts of the mid frequencies. Okay, now let's listen the woodwinds and the brass. And step by step, we're trying to achieve the balance, and we're building the house. Now, I'm gonna do something else, which is a trick of the lazy people. I'm gonna put another EQ on the master and gonna reduce a little bit right now some of the frequency that are not good. Actually, in this one, in this free and clever plugin, there is also presets. And one of them is called Master Clear, if I remember. No, that's not the one. This one looks... Okay, this one is going to start as a starting position. As you can hear, I don't know how you listen on that monitors, but the thing is to remove the boxiness in all the groups presently. The boxiness and the moodiness usually lies between 200 and 300 Hertz, always. That doesn't mean that you have to cut that from all the instrument groups, always, because it's going to start to sound thin. The problem with the age, you start to listen slightly less high frequency. That's why sometimes my mixes are slightly on the bright side, so I have to listen on it in a couple of hours of rest, or next day even better. But that's going to happen to you also. You might think that you achieved very good mix, but the next day you listen it different ways, because with the time your ears start to compress, and the older you get, the more the compressor has longer release. I mean, it stays compressed even for minutes and even for hours until it, because it not that soft, the eardrum already. Okay, so we're gonna listen through that only as a context again. And now is the right moment, which is not exactly in the beginning. And if you listen a reference from the start, that's going to cue your creativity because you want to mimic directly to that reference. But not at the end, because you're going to waste a lot of time and it's going to appear that you've been in totally wrong path and direction. So somewhere in the middle, because this is a very brass heavy cue, somewhere in the middle of the listening and the work, you have to find a proper example and good reference track. Excuse me, Seth. Yeah. I'm in position to pick my reference today. And I pick my dearest friend Mix Down approximately 10 years ago. He mixed the score for Warcraft, the movie. And now let's listen it again, just to change the taste in our mouth. If we tasting a good wine, you have to stop and you have to drink a little water and to eat something, and after this to drink it again. Now we're gonna listen to an example, for example. Example, for example, very good. It's not gonna work like this. I have to import it. Now we're going to remove that and remove the master plugin, and let's listen to it. Okay, because we don't have a limiter, I'm going to reduce that by 5 dB because it's mastered, of course. I download it from YouTube. How did I choose that example for reference? In Seth's cue, we have mighty brass, we have staccato, a lot of things. We have percussions, we have very spooky choir and vocal stuff. So Mr. Javadi mimics Seth's very good. And we have to learn how it sounds. Analytically, we have to listen to it for a half minute, no more. Okay. It's pretty obvious that he was very clever, and he made the sandwich, the maestro makes the sandwich of that composition to be very easy to understand where is the bread, where is the meat, and where is the salad in it. As you can hear, the brass and the low strings playing together sometime. If he wants to show something, it's long notes, and the staccato parts, it's the rhythmical, the pulsating part of that, which gives you impression that something wrong is going to happen, and it's going to happen soon, because the tempo is not slow, it's not high, so it's anticipating something bad to happen. What's the name of this? It's the hearts. Okay, this is the scene where we're presenting the heart, the orcs army and tribe and stuff. Obviously here the percussions are very prominent. After this, the lowest brass, and after this it's everything else which is staccato and pulsating. It's somewhere in the middle. And we can hear very, very clearly the men's choir. Okay, and now we're gonna mute that. And because we talk a little bit, we forget already how sounds our cue. Okay, directly I can tell you that there is a lot of things. First, strings are very up front and present, they have to be slightly blurred. In the whole, they are like this because the live recording of the strings is in small studio with spot microphones a lot. So the distance between the microphones and the musicians is not big because there's no way to put it more because you're going to start to listen more and more room. So in not good sounding rooms, spot microphones and reverb after this. In good sounding rooms, you can put the microphones slightly further because it's going to make a mixture between the sound of the whole and the proximity of the instrument. And that's a good mixture. Now, the first thing that we have to do is, as far as I can hear, your mock-up strings are also with reverb. It is. Now, but our live strings... Okay! Where's that toilet? First, again, they playing like a bunch of lost Indians, slightly drunk. Now I'm gonna put a little dynamic improvement. Okay, and after this, we're gonna do the same with the clever little bastard here. So, what we're listening in that strings, they're very, sorry. There is, again, boxiness. There is something in low mid frequency that the same bloody 250 around. There is something wrong there. Let's try to improve the clarity by not adding a frequency, but removing the muddiness. Okay, the muddiness is slightly reduced, but it's not powerful. That there is only one bass or something like this. So we're gonna add a little low shelf here. Okay, now we're gonna add a little sparkle at the top. Okay, but now it's too much the low, so we have to find only where is the double bass, and I'm gonna put the low cut here. Again, there is a certain place in the strings, in the frequency, which is where is the nastiness in the high frequencies, and it's around 2-3 kilohertz. Let's listen to it. We did something, isn't it? We start to getting there, but it sounds again like we are in the basement. We're gonna put a little reverb. what I'm doing now, this is the EQ of the reverb, because I'm listening to the strings, how the reverb affects to the strings. And it seems to me that it could be better. That's why I'm cutting from the high frequency to reduce the nasty brittleness in the highest portion of the reverb. Again, the mud in the reverb, and the lowest because I don't want the reverb to be boomy. Now it's without the question. Can you see well when it's bypassed and where it's not? Because
Yes.
I'm not sure absolutely. Again, step by step, we put 2 pinches of salt. It's not enough. The good thing about the mix is that if we put 4 and it appears that it's too salty, we can remove 1 immediately. It's not like with the cooking. Okay, now we have to listen it with the mock-up strings. You can see and you can hear that I'm not using a lot of the mock-up strings actually. I don't know what his intentions. After this we're going to talk with him. But I'm using the mock-up strings only to be more meaty, to be more bigger, and to be more correct tune-wise and to be more neat. You see, it's very little portion of the sound, but it adds first whole, because they are recorded samples in a whole, real whole. After this, it adds more even dynamic it's more even as a dynamic everything. At the end, it's adding a little more sparkling because they are more bright. But the low also are more heavy in the samples. So together, as you can see, there's no on the mock-up I didn't send anything. Now I'm gonna put just a little tiny bit because it has to pass through our reverb just a little bit for us to be fooled that they are in the same room a little bit. Okay, there's still something which bothers me, and this is that the proximity of the live strings is very obvious. They are close, very up close to us. That's why I'm going to put on all the folder of live strings, I'm going to put, as I told you before, a halo, not a reverb, just a little halo around them. And I'm going to do that with ambience. It's going to be something like a medium to long ambience, and we're going to listen together what it's doing. This is 100%. Actually, that makes us to listen the recording of the strings in dolly from the hallway. But now we're gonna reduce only to 20% of that corridor sound. Very close, not that close, you see? Let's listen again with the other strings. Let's listen with the woodwinds and the brass. Okay, now let's put slightly less woodwinds and a lot less brass, and let's listen it again. thing that I did is because already we stacked a lot of material. I mean, live strings, mock-up strings, live and mock-up brass and woodwinds. I'm starting to reducing the master now because I want to know that that's correct dynamic equation between the groups. Again, the more instruments we're building in the reverb, the more obvious is the help of that EQ on the reverb. And now we're gonna listen with boosted, the same frequency that I made the decision decide to cut. We're gonna listen it boosted. Do we need that? No, we don't need that. Do we need that? Nasty. No. No, we don't need that neither. Okay, now. For ear candy, we're gonna stop to listen the strings and the woodwinds and the brass now. We're gonna listen just the percussions a little bit. I love percussions. Let's go to the plugin and listen again. I want to be shaky. I want to feel that the subwoofer is doing something because we give money for subwoofer. Okay, so that I want to listen the sticks a little bit. And for good or bad, I'm slightly deaf, so I'm gonna put a little more. So it earns its money. Oh, it's free. God damn it. Okay, how about the voices? Hum. Hum. Cool. We're gonna help them with a little compressor again first, because I want to listen that the okay, but that sweep and goes, the sweep goes to a frequency that we don't need also. Let's listen again with a little EQ. Where is it? There it is. that. No. There it is. And I'm gonna put a little compressor on it also there. Okay, now. It's not a bad idea to listen on headphones because I'm mixing all the time with the monitors towards you. How about the sound design? Now is the time to take a 5 to 10 minute break because we need our ears to judge fairly, to be fair and to get rest a little bit. And after this, we're gonna listen. First of all, I'm gonna unmute everything, and just for 1 minute, we're gonna listen, and we're gonna try to make quickly a reasonable mix from all that. I'm gonna put a limiter just to be slightly more louder. Nothing else. Before we took the break, I'm gonna put something else. I'm gonna put on the master just a little tiny bits of ambience reverb, but only like a 15-20%. Why I'm doing this? Because at the moment they are not together. I need to put them in a frame. This small amount of ambience reverb on the master, which is not correct, and a lot of people is gonna tell you that you're fired to put on the master reverb, but honestly, a small amount of ambience gonna put a frame of everything and gonna put everything slightly further from you, because now you're like a conductor who is almost within the orchestra, and we want to be slightly in the audience, because in the cinema, when the music is mixed with the effects and the follies and the voiceovers and stuff, you listen it slightly back. I mean, it's not up front. So that's why before we stop for 10 minutes, I'm gonna try something, and I'm gonna put again 100% ambient, again approximately 200, and we're gonna start, let's start with 20%. If it's too much, we can unsalt it. Okay. It suits a little of the problems, and it suits a little of the edges, and it puts everything, if it's 195 milliseconds, 3 milliseconds by meter, that puts a tiny bit of microphone, which is at the end of the back side of the whole, like we have a whole microphones, and we mix them a little bit with everything else. So it's the reflection of the rear wall of everything. The real instruments, the mock-up strings, the mock-up woodwinds, the choir and the spooky gentleman, and everybody else, they have slight reflection for the rear wall, and they put everything in the frame, and they put it that it's in the same environment altogether. Okay, cool. Break. During the break, what we're gonna do with the guys? They're gonna stay online, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, cool. 10 minutes, now it's 04. In 15, we're gonna be together again, because I don't know the listeners where they are. So 10 to 11 minutes. Do I have to? Are you sure that's? Okay. Now it's okay. No. They did something there. I didn't see myself, and
Okay.
I was afraid that we're not broadcasting.
Something.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, we are back, and now since we are back, we're gonna listen again the reference track just for a second. And we have to, I have to remind us where we are. Okay, now. The mix is made by Nick Walsh, who is my very fellow and friend and colleague from Air Lyndhurst. And I can tell you that he's one of the wisest and one of the best mixing engineers presently. He made the mixes for very big projects. And I'm very fond of his mixdown usually. And it's very surprising that today we're gonna listen his mix down for reference. And the thing, it's pretty obvious that we spent some time together. I was his assistant for 3 or 4 projects. I'm gonna put the headphones just for a second. Okay, now we're gonna listen with the reverb, without the reverb. And now we're gonna listen it's with and without the EQ on the reverb. Honestly, only EQ on the reverb by itself, it needs a lot of work for clarity. Now we're gonna listen. I'm gonna mute all the dynamic EQs all together to listen what's the difference between the raw material and the thing that we did. Okay, there is a purpose of that dynamic EQ, obviously. So, and now I'm gonna go back in the beginning where I told you that it's not a black art. Actually, it's done many years ago, same way. Probably they're gonna do it the same way in 20 or 50 years ahead from now. It's the panoramas, it's the high and low pass filters. That means that you're going to leave the low portion of information for the low instruments, and high information and presence and brightness for the high instruments. That's natural, that's normal. But it's not the situation always with the recording and the samples. Very often, because a lot of microphones interfere with each other. I mean, in one of the microphones you listen another instrument, and in the opposite microphone of the other instrument you listen the first instrument. So there is a leakage, and all that leakage has its own mud. And when you stack all the microphones, the mud is building up. And at the end, it's not exactly the sound of one microphone, but 30, 40, 50 microphones with their point of view. It's like an audience watching something. It's a point of view of many different people all together. And when you mix it, all the point of view in one whole of the audience, you're gonna start to receive better 3D perspective. But one of them is shorter, another one is very tall, one of them is with glasses, another one has to be with glasses, but his vision is blurred already, but he doesn't took the glasses. So you have to, all that little imperfection of the audience, you have to take it and to improve it as much as you can to make it all the quality of the different point of views of the different microphones to be clean as possible, and together to stack them up all together and mix them. It's totally like with cooking. First you peel and you clean and you wash everything. After this you might prepare, and after this you might put them together, pre-prepared stuff. It's the same thing here. Of course, tomorrow when you start to listen to it, it might be too bright or not too heavy on the low end. The question is that we're using very, very small steps with opposite EQ curvings. Again, on the live brass, as you can see, it's very dramatic, the thing that I done. And when we compare it to the woodwinds, excuse me, as you can see, the woodwinds has a little boost in the middle, and exactly almost there, the brass has a cut. This is opposite, controversial EQ curving. That means that you already prepare a nest, a cradle for the woodwinds within the brass. It's the same with the strings. As you can see, the strings, we put it again slightly on top, slightly, but we remove the muddiness. For percussion, it's almost the same because they are not sharing the same sound properties like the strings. So you can make the almost the same curves for different, but they don't have to be similar as a sound. But for the voices, as you can see again, compared to the strings, you see again the voices has a little in the middle because our voices are made to be middle, to project sound in the mid frequencies. Because we're not perfect, we're not bats. We can hit extremely high frequency, and we are not whales, so we can't hear extremely low frequency. We're living people, and we listen a little in the middle. That's why I'm boosting the natural parts of the sounds of each of the group of the instruments. Again, at the end, we put a little frame ambience. With Pablo, we have a discussion in the break. Actually, if you put a little ambient reverb on top of everything on a master, it's gonna work as 3 different processors. As a small reverb, putting everything slightly further. As a transient designer, because every reverb reduces the very big spikes in the transients, so it smooths everything a little bit. And as EQ, because it has a high cut and a low pass filter. On the high cut, as you can see in the reverb, From 15 hertz towards, there's nothing. But because it's in modesty, it's used only 16%, it's only a mixture of another reverb. It's not gonna blur. On contrary, it's gonna make it more 3D because it's another camera on the back of the whole, which is give you another perspective of everything put it together. And also it's a soft compressor on top of everything, so it's a fourth thing that is doing this a little ambient on the master, because it compresses everything slightly a little bit when it squeezes everything and put it in the frame. Again, it's only 60%. I mean, it's the one. You're gonna do the math. Okay. Now, since we talk about the panning, about the high and low pass, about the opposing curving, about the dynamic EQ, what's doing the dynamic EQ, you can boost something, but at the same time, you can put a threshold from the moment when it exceeds a certain dynamic, it's gonna start to tame it a little bit. So it's gonna be bright, but if, for example, in the woodwinds appears a blast from the piccolo, it's gonna stop it because it's a compressor and EQ at the same time, and that's very cool. And now we're gonna talk about a little bit about the side compressor, side chain compressor. I'm gonna use as a candidate and as a reference something a lot simpler. Again, it's gonna be only a kick drum and a bass because the idea is very simple. And I'm gonna show it how it's working, but you can use it for solo instruments compared to all the other orchestra, or a voice to help the voice to be more audible in very dense and heavy mix of rock or metal or electronic EDM music or something like this. We're gonna talk about a little bit side chain compression, which is gonna obviously it's a candidate for improving the clarity and to reduce the masking of the frequency. Across the stars, my friend Lubudanev, who wrote a musical. But unfortunately, we're going to listen only the bass drum and the finger bass. Okay, so we have a bass drum, spot microphone, and a finger bass. Okay, bass drum. The typical cardboard box. And now, first of all, what we're gonna do with just to have a better attack, we're gonna put one expander because we don't want to listen. It's like a gate. We don't want to listen the leakage between the hits. Now it's clean. Now we're gonna put a little compressor. Okay, and now is the important moment. If we listen together with the brass, with the bass, excuse me. Okay, it's blurry and it's not very punchy, the bass drum. And that's the moment when we're gonna put a sidechain compressor to the bass. How it works. On most of the compressor plugins, you have one little key. This is the key inputs. This is where the sidechain processing takes the information, where to start to work and when not to work. And I put it to take information from bus 21, and on bass drum, I put ascend to bus 21. That means that this bus going to nowhere, but the compressor is going to use that feed. When the bass drum hits, he will know from this different bus that it's working, and on that moment, it's going to start to reduce a little bit and very quickly from the, it's going to reduce the level of the bass only for this one portion of the second when the kick plays. And as you can see by the needle, that's how we help to the kick drum in that situation. Now I'm going to bypass this sidechain compressor. Again with it. Bless you. Okay, and on top of everything, I'm gonna put EQ standard curve on the kick drum because it's recorded with vintage microphone, so it needs a little high frequency boost for the clipping and reducing the mud in the middle, and low frequency boost for the thumb. No, I don't need you. This is the EQ for the bass guitar, and this is the compressor of the drum. Again, with it, as you can see, the attack of the bass is reduced, but the attack of the kick drum is boosted. All that I'm doing has to be done in modesty because to be more obvious on the speakers, I'm doing it in slightly extreme settings. And now with everything else. The only thing that I'm gonna do now is to bypass and make active the sidechain compressor on the bass. And you let me know on the speakers. Can you hear more present kick drum? Okay, so the thing that it's doing is the automation in the volume of the bass exactly when the kick plays, and that's everything. If you use the same concept on the vocal against everything else, you can push a little more everything else as a level because it's automatically gonna make a little bed for the vocal only when the vocal sings. It's especially useful, it's mostly useful if it's very, very dynamic and heavy mix that you're trying to to put something in it, like a solo violin in the middle of a very loud orchestra, but you don't want to reduce the orchestra. You want to only to put the violin to be more. It might be a flute. It might be a alto flute, which is even more complex to put the alto flute to be audible and very. But you need that note in only that moment. On all the other time, it's not going to do anything except to help certain instrument or certain group of instrument, because you can put the sidechain on the group or on individual track. And that's all. And now we talk about that. The other thing that you can do is to make more clear difference of the sounds between two very close sounding instruments as a timbre and as a note, is to put a little halo around with a little reverb on one, totally different from the other one. The other thing that you can do is to put slight, very short delay, and when they play together, when the notes are together on the score, on the part, if something is slightly behind the other one, it's going to be more easier to listen both instruments. Only if the attacks are slightly, what's the words? Not together. Offset. Offset. Thank you very much, Seth. Joke. Cool. And now, huge problem solvers plugins. I'm gonna show you now, and gonna give you a couple of suggestions, an explanation what all that plugins that I'm gonna offer you as links in the document that you're gonna receive, what they are doing. All of them are exactly related to the topic today. It's about frequency masking and make everything clearer. There it is. Okay, that's the PDF that you're gonna receive. It's everything that we talked today, how to make something better sounding and clearer, and to remove the frequency masking, put it in different place on the stereo, to use different high and low pass for the different instrument. Opposite EQ curvings, I mean, something is in the middle, the other thing in the middle is going to be cut. Dynamic EQ that I show you, sidechain compressor. Volume automation is, of course, if you wrote on the score and in the parts totally equal dynamic, after this you have to be very careful how you're gonna during the mix, how you're gonna put something up and something down in the same. It's totally the same like the opposite EQ curvings. You can do something totally the same with the volume. Opposite volume automation. Something is less, something is which is self-explainable. Transient shaping and saturation. The transient shaping, I told you, if something is with very sharp and fast transients, and the other instruments again is the same, very sharp, and you can put smoother transients on one of the instruments and sharper on the other one. It's going to help the same way. Saturation is something like a distorting but tiny bits of instrument. It's going to help again because, for example, the flute and the clarinet, for example, in long notes, they have almost the same quality of the sound. It's rounded, it's mid and mid-high frequency, but if one of them is slightly more saturated, slightly more driven than the other one, it's going to be more obvious that this is the slightly more driven is going to be the clarinet, of course, because it's slightly more muddier than the flute. If you saturate a little bit the clarinet, is going to be more obvious when they're playing together, even in unison, that one is the clarinet, the other one is flute. Reverb delay, I told you if you make offsets a little bit of the attack of different instruments, it's going to be more easier to, they're going to be more distinguishable between each other. Reverb and the halo around the reverb, different kinds of reverb. And now the special plugins. At the bottom I wrote number 10 is the arrangement. Actually, this is number 1 in all that problems. Why that instrument exactly that you choose? Knowing the color and the range of instruments is going to help you at all because help you a lot because you can change even whole octaves, and it's going to be easier after this to be. It's going to be more audible. It's easier to mix. Careful dynamic distribution and dynamic distribution. Don't use the same dynamic for different roles in the woodwinds, for example. Timbre decision between the instrument, octave, that's, you got it. If you have to layer different voices, if it's in the different family of instrument, it's going to be a lot better. Positioning instruments in the stereo field, in the studio hall, for example. And the sandwich style reinforcement with samples is going to help again with the clarity as we listen. And now, first is the link to the where you're going to download. This is initial, that company. It costs, the price is 0. I don't know for how long, but I can give you an install because I downloaded the installer. When you have only the installer, you don't need to make accounts in the page or something like this. So you're safe. I'm going to give you the installer. That's the plugin that we talk about. There's a lot of explanation stuff. Okay, now let's go to the other one. Next one. This is not one plugin, but for you, if you want to spend more money for sample libraries, for samples and stuff, and instruments, and less for plugins, that's a good Italian company which has almost everything that you might need as a tool. I mean, we're talking about a combination of approximately 50 plugins and small tools. What? A lot of people probably getting it. Why I'm offering it? Because all of them are working extremely good, not very fancy as an interface, but very effective. At least 30% of the plugins are free. The other 2/3 of the instruments, and there's also synthesizers, and tools and plugins are between 5 and 10 euro. Let's check again if we're lucky. Yes. 5 pages of tools. Most of these prices, at least once per month, getting 80% lower, 80. So there's a lot of free stuff, as you can see. There's a lot of, when they put a discount for 80% is for everything. So that means that this one, which is $10.99, is going to be $2.99 if you need exactly that. That's improve your headphones mixes, whatever. You have a meters inside, you have a transient designers, you have a compressors, you have everything, mastering processors with reviews. And something important about that company is that everything is without protection. So they hoping that you're gonna pay this $12.99. That means when you download the plugin, it don't has a dongles, iLock or something like that. You install it, it's working. They just hoping that you're gonna pay that money. It's fair to pay it sooner or later, especially if you. That's why they don't have a demo, because they have the full version always. This is the second one. And I wrote this. The first one is free, almost and often free bag of goodies. I wrote under FAB filter, of course. All of you know the FAB filter equalizer Q3. The coolest thing about the Q3 is that it automatically gonna suggest where there is a masking problems, because if you put this EQ on numerous tracks or many auxes, you have a window where it shows how they interact together. And it's gonna show you all the masking problems on one of the, let me see if I can show you, where's that collision detector. So it has a sidechain. You see it on the first audio track, it's called audio. After this, you have a drums and horns, and it shows you with the red where the frequency clashes. You see? It almost doing everything for you without you have a time for beer. Almost the same is going to do a Sonable EQ, which is called Smart EQ4. If you put the Smart EQ4 on many channels, at the end you have this extra window which shows you again everything together. But the interesting here is that it's going to suggest you a curve for each of the tracks to blend better at the end with all the other tracks. So it's going to make all that controversial opposite carvings for you. And you have to listen, of course, because it's artificial intelligence is going to do that. On the top, you have a menu, and you show for that's piano, and you put the EQ. It listens a little, the couple of seconds from the instruments, and suggests you a curve. After this, on the horns, you're going to put this is a horn because in the settings here on Learn All, it's going to ask you what kind of instrument is that. If it doesn't tell anything to the plugin, he's going to understand that it's a piano or it's a drum set. But if you help it, it's going to be slightly easier for the software to get the idea. Okay, Isotope. Isotope is Neutron 4 is very fancy because again it has this little circle is artificial intelligent life within, and it's listened to the, again you can tell that these are the drums from the percussion. You can show it, this is the cymbal, this is the drum, this is the kick, this is the snare, whatever. But it's going to understand again, and it's going to show you what kind of instrument, and it's going to suggest you. But the good thing about this plugin is not EQ only. It's everything. It's limiter, compressor, equalizer, transient designer, exciter, and you can use up to 6 of this module together in one plugin. And when it listens to your material, it's gonna give you both compressor, equalizer, transient designer, and even the gate all together on a roll. It's expensive, but very often it's very, 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 there's a very big discounts. Distortion, make space. Even there's a make space between different tracks, you can see. Again, if you put it on many tracks, it's gonna offer you an idea how to make a space between the instruments and how to remove totally the masking, because it's gonna find where they're clashing. Sound stereo Guffos. This is something which I'm using all the time. And it's hard to me to tell you what exactly is that. It's, let's say that it's automatic dynamic EQ. That means that I'm going to put it in, I'm going to tell to the plugin how much I want to tame and how much I want to recover from the things that are not audible. And it's going to start to do it in real time for you. And usually I'm going to put that on the group auxes or folder tracks. It's automatically found where there is a nasty resonances. Doesn't matter if it's in high frequency, mid frequency, low frequency, it's finding the resonances and start to reducing it dynamically, not cutting. Because when you're cutting, you're missing some tonal information always. So it starts to reduce if there's something nasty and very prominent. Oxan, this is a lifesaver because I work with it on many not well recorded solo violins, solo vocals, solo instruments, let's say. Again, it finds what's wrong if there's a distortion, if the microphone is humming, or if the violin is very harsh sounding. It starts to listen to it, and that's why it's called soothe, because it soothes unpleasant sounds in solo instruments. And at the end, this is again a magic plugin, which is exactly a sidechain compressor, but for dummies. You put it in the thing that you want to be reduced, and you send it to listen the important thing, and it suggests you how much and in which frequency only, because the thing that I show you with B76, the simple compressor in the Pro Tools, between the bass and the kick, was for all the frequencies. This one's gonna find only where, in which frequencies it can reduce the root material. And for example, if it's the voice, male voice, it's gonna reduce a little only in the low mids in the material, not everywhere. If it's a female voice, it's going to be in high mids a little. It's going to find the perfect place where to reduce on the blue one is the solo, for example, the voice. The white one is the thing that it's going to do with the thing that it has to be 10. So it's going to be more transparent sounding, because it's going to be very hard for you, even that you're doing it, to understand where exactly it puts down the orchestra or the band or whatever it is. Okay, hope that today was not a bad day for science, and especially for the music and for the art. I was very happy to spend a little time with you. Hope that didn't waste your time. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
You're great. If there's a... okay. Hey, Tysa. Hey, Leo. How are you guys? Alex. Hugs and kisses, Katie. Okay.